Welcome to part 4 of the red marbles. Now I'm continuing to paint the last marble, which is green. It has a green flower or shape in the center of it. So I'm outlining this shape in the gray area. I'm outlining it with black. 750 Carbothello black, shading it a little bit with the black. We're going to use a combination of colors all around the outside of the gray area. The one I have in my hand right now that I'm using is Carbothello 440 Sky Blue. I'll also be using Carbothello 405 Ultramarine and gray Carbothello 726. Now I'm using a little 100 white Carbothello to add a highlight on that outside edge of the marble on the right, and I'm using my Diane Townsend to put a bright highlight on that and also on the top of the marble. You can reshape that with your pencil if you get too much or you don't get enough. Now I'm using the 726 to color carefully around this shape that's going to be green. I'm adding 726 coal gray, carefully going around the shapes inside this marbles that we're going to paint green a little bit later on. Now I'll use my black 750 Carbothello to darken some of the shapes. We can use our black and our white pencils and other colors to modify a color and change it if we don't have exactly the right color. So I'm coloring over this gray with the 750 black. Now after I have blended the black, I'm going to use the 405 Ultramarine over top of that gray to change the color. If you remember on the last video, we talked about making it more of a slate gray. And so that's what I'm doing by adding the blue to the dark gray. I'm using the Carbothello 100 Black to add a highlight on the outside of the left edge and down on the right, and I'll putting a little gray 726 in this area, and I'm going to outline it with black and go over it with the black to make it a little darker, and adding some ultramarine. Now I'm going to outline this little box down at the bottom with Carbothello 575 leaf green, and I'm going to add a highlight on top of that with Carbothello leaf green pale 560. And now I'm adding dots with a third green color, which is Carbothello 570 or leaf green middle, and adding some little dots with the 575 as well. Now I'm using the 570 leaf green middle to outline the first shape, and I'm going to fill it in with 575 leaf green. So I put the 575 at the top, and I'm adding 570 up to the darker line. I'm highlighting that top edge with a little bit of 440 sky blue and a 100 white over the top. Here I'm using dark green 595 to add a little darker color to our leaf shape. So each shape will be lightening with 560 leaf green pale, 440 sky blue, and 100 white, and darkening with 595 dark green. Now I'm filling in the second shape with 575 leaf green. Now I'm adding 570 leaf green middle just above it where it's lighter. Here I'm continuing with the leaf green middle, the 570, filling in the entire leaf shape. This is dark green 595. I'm adding a darker color, a little shadow on the shape. Another little dark green shape. And then I'm highlighting the tip with 560 leaf green pale. I felt like there needed to be a brighter, more springy color in the green. So I'm using here a Conte number 2, which is called dark green, to just punch the color up. Makes it a little more vibrant. Outline the last shape of the first group of green, first grouping in the green shape with the Conte Dark 2. And on the outside edge, use the 570 leaf green middle on the edge and also the 560 leaf green pale to make a highlight. Paint the next cluster of the green shape the same way you did with the previous one, using Carbothello 570, 560, 595 dark green, and Conte number 2. So I've painted the ones on the bottom. I'm adding Carbothello white for the highlight area. I'm painting the last green shape at the bottom with Conte number 2, dark green. Outline it and fill it in. I'm adding Carbothello 440 at the top, and I'm using a little Carbothello white over that blue to soften it and make it a little lighter. And I will outline the bottom of the last green shape with dark green 595. Darken any areas that you see that could use darkening with the Carbothello 595. Add some lights with Diane Townsend on the side and inside the shape on top of some areas of the green. Fill in the shape at the bottom right of this marble with Diane Townsend. Use a little 405 Carbothello Ultramarine to add a little more blue in some of the darker areas. And strengthen the whites with Carbothello 100 white. Strengthen the outline around the bottom of the marble and in the interior of the little triangle with Carbothello 750 black. Underline the last green shape with Carbothello 750 black, then using your Pitt 151 Prussian blue, color blue in the center stripe underneath the black line and the last cluster of green. So we're coloring just in the center of that area, and on either side of it fill it in with Derwent 330 Cerulean. Shade the color with Carbothello 405 Ultramarine and use 440 Sky Blue to add small dots of a lighter blue as accents. We're making little circles with our pencil. And also use Carbothello 100 white to make them a little bit brighter. Outline the shadow of the blue marble with a 750 black Carbothello and 770 Payne's Gray at the very end. So half the circle's black, half is Payne's Gray. Now in the very center of this shadow and reflection, I'm going to use the Carbothello 100 white to add a starburst in the center. Now we're going to start the shadow by using 750 black right up underneath the marble. And here I'm adding Carbothello 405 Ultramarine into the black, which is a reflection of the marble because it's blue, into the shadow on the table. I'm going to lighten that with a little 440 sky blue right on the edge. Adding a little bit more of 405 ultramarine. And now I'm using the 726 Cold Gray 4 to bring that color down in between the starburst. I'm going over the 726 Gray with the 440 Sky Blue. So that kind of, it takes the gray and makes it more towards a blue tone. And I'm going to blend that with my blender. I'm using the 770 Payne's Gray to add dark color in between the starburst at the bottom, radiating outward to the edges of the reflection. I'm going to carry this all the way out to the edges, and then I'm going to blend it. You can see I'm carrying this all the way outward. Now I'm going to add a little 405 ultramarine at the edge of the shadow. I'm going to take my blender and blend all of this together. Add more Payne's Gray as needed to darken and blend well. I'm adding more Payne's Gray, making this darker at the very end. And I'm going to blend it. It's not quite dark enough, so I'm going to use 750 black to add some black in between the starburst areas and blend that outward towards the edge. Blend everything well, and then add more white to the starburst area, brightening that up a little bit. You'll always have to go back and tweak little things that you see as you paint, and that's okay. Add a little Diane Townsend bright white at the center for that extra sparkle. And this is the Pitt 230 light gray. I'm using that to add some reflected streaks that I saw in the shadow. That looks very nice. And go in between that with black. That makes a very nice effect. I can make this darker in areas with the Create a Color pastel lead that we talked about in one of the previous videos. Really is dark. Paint this last shadow, and we're going to start off by putting a starburst in the center of the shadow using Carbothello white and leaf green middle number 570 and 560 leaf green pale. Now up at the top, I'm using the 440 Sky Blue to add some blue color right to the center. And I'm using black 750 right up under the marble to make it darker. Now this is the earth green number 172. It's the same color as the paper, and I wanted to draw a line around the marble extending up to where the paper value shows. So that's what I did with that. Now this shadow from the green marble merges with the shadow from the red marble. So here I'm using leaf green middle number 570 to add color reflected into the shadow of the green marble. I want to blend that green well. And now I'm going to move to the opposite side of the shadow and use the 750 black to add some color up in the top. I'm also putting some green 570 leaf green middle into that area and blending it together with the blender. Now, right in the very center of this starburst area, I'm putting some 595 dark green. And over the dark green, I'm putting in some 560 leaf green pale. I've adjusted the camera where you can see this area better. So I'm using 770 Payne's Gray to color in the area on the outside at the top. I'm darkening this area with 750 black and also 595 green and blending it with my finger. I want to blend it into the shadow of the red marble, which is right over to the left. So I'm using the 595 to go in between the starburst area that we applied at the beginning. Using a little more 560 leaf green pale. And this is 770 Payne's Gray. I'm using the blender to blend in the 770 Payne's Gray, and I'm adding some 750 black over that to make it a little darker. And then we'll blend that together as well. Continuing to work around the outside of the shadow using 770 and 750 and blending it well with my blender. Now I'm enhancing the starburst with Carbothello 100 white, and I'm making the lines squiggly rather than straight. And I'm also using the Pitt 230 to make light gray lines. And that just really looks nice. I like the way that looks. So I'm just kind of pushing the pastel pencil and making it a squiggly movement. I'm going to work around the shadow, filling it in the same manner with 770 Payne's Gray and 750 black over that. And we're going to add starburst effect to the other side as well, using the 560 leaf green pale, the 100 Carbothello white. Here I'm extending the starburst with the 100 white. And working in between that area with the 770 Payne's Gray. I've completed going around the outside of the shadow with the 770. I'm adding black to the outside edge, and I'm going to blend that with the blender. Here I'm adding leaf green middle, which is 570, and some more Carbothello white. And for a final touch, use the Pitt Pastel 230 Cold Gray Light. I hope that you have enjoyed this video series. Here I'm cleaning up some excess pastel with my kneaded eraser, and that you'll join me again for our next project. Please check out my website at kwit.com and see what other projects and classes I have available.